Welcome to another episode of Warriors Unite, the Untold Story. And today I'll be talking about my story because, of course, you'd want to know who I am and what's been my sickle cell journey. So first of all, I haven't had a lot of complications as other warriors would know it as. Complications meaning things deriving from sickle cell. I have not had a lot of the experiences. I'm grateful, but it also makes me a little bit sad because I can't relate. And I found myself yet again in another space of almost sticking out like a sore thumb, pretty much. But what I can remember is that, or what I've been told, I wouldn't remember a lot of that. My parents found out that I had sickle cell when I was a baby. There is a test that is done for all newborn babies. We call it screening. And they found out that I had it. Before that, my dad knew that he had the trait, but my mom got a false negative. Turns out that she has the trait after all because I have it full blown. I have siblings and none of my siblings have sickle cell or the trait. So I'm just Danny. At 6, I got a virus infection and that caused me to have, my blood count fell. I think my blood count fell to about 4, which is critical. I should have died, didn't. I remember the blood transfusion process. I think that's the only time I've been transfused before I had the splenectomy. So that was my first transfusion experience. Fast forward to 2010. In 2010, I would have been about 17 going to 18. I had my first major surgery. I say in first like I've had another one, but it's the only major surgery that I've had, which is a splenectomy. My spleen was 14 centimeters, and so it had to be removed. We joke about it all the time to say it's a mini fetus because it really was. But yeah, I think that's the only major complication. I've had chest sequestration, just like every other sickle cell warrior. I've had crises, but I haven't had a stroke. I've not had any hip replacements. I've not had any damage to any major organs. So that's a good thing. Growing up, I never really told persons about sickle cell. I don't think I've ever expressed openly prep school, primary school, even while touring for dancing. I never ever said that I had sickle cell. It was almost like my secret. People would either find out that I was sick or they knew that I didn't look like them. But it was never a case where I said I had sickle cell disease. I remember in high school, I had a very enlarged spleen. As I tell you, my spleen was the size of a mini fetus. So I had an enlarged spleen. My eyes were very yellow, but that was basically it. I lived a pretty normal, in my sense, childhood. I've traveled to a lot of places that now I know that I shouldn't have traveled to without medical advice. But we'll get into that a little later down. I danced for majority of my life, so now my cartilages are worn. And I was told that if I continued to dance, I would be crippled permanently, or I'd have to do a hip replacement. So, of course, my mother them get extreme, and I was placed in a wheelchair for a week and 2 weeks on crutches during that period because we were trying to not damage the cartilage anymore. I mentioned not traveling without medical advice. Altitude, I now learned that it affects sickle cell disease or the patients because it means that our blood doesn't flow the same way. Gravity, the higher you go, basic things. But I think I noted that issue in my most recent crisis, and that was also my scariest crisis. So I went to work. It was a typical day. It just so happened that I was in the hills. On that same day, I was on my cycle. So I'm losing blood as the day go on. It's a typical day. I didn't think that it was that extreme. I was fine. I remember feeling fine. I wasn't cold. I wasn't sick. I was okay. Like, I was really okay. But things went 0 to 1,000. After having a good day, I just started vomiting out of nowhere. And I now know that if we didn't get help on that particular day, I would have died on the hill. So, yeah. When I started asking my doctors what led to all of that, that's when I learned that altitude affected us. And that's when I learned that all these years traveling, I've been to many places. I never knew that going on a plane was so dangerous. I didn't know that I needed to have special socks. I didn't know that I needed to get a full executive before I jump on a plane. I never knew that. So the whole altitude situation really made me take a stock. And that was also my scariest experience. I didn't die, thank God, but I was really sick. And with every time, well, for me, every time I have a crisis, I also go into an emotional state because it's lonely. You don't know how to explain it to anybody. You don't know how to break it down. You also don't know. Sometimes you don't even understand it yourself. Because I was sick, I knew I was having a crisis, or I figured it out when I got to a place where I couldn't drive anymore. And I'm in a vehicle where persons also could not drive. So it's not like I can say, oh, take over the car. It was pretty scary, but I didn't know how I got there. And so there are times when I've gotten sick and I can't explain to you how I've gotten there or what led me to being sick. There are times when I wake up and I feel like it's a normal day and boom, I'm in the hospital. And that happened to me as well during high school. Everybody else got to sit their exams in a room with their friends. I sat my exams in a hospital bed by myself. So it's a little bit different dealing with emotions and dealing with the entire aspect of sickle cell because it's a lot. It affects every aspect of your life. But it's also something that I stay grateful for because it's allowed me to appreciate the community that I have and community of supporters, but community of warriors. And I think that's the best gift I could have been given because I've met some amazing people. And I truly started advocating in 2019 or using my voice to speak out about sickle cell. But I've met some amazing persons since then. I've never been hospitalized for more than, outside of the surgery, of course, it's a major surgery, so it takes recovery time. But in a crisis, I've never been hospitalized for more than 2 weeks. And 2 weeks is a short time for some persons, but for some, 2 weeks is a long time. And I thoroughly hate hospitals. I hate doctors. So it was very difficult. But I remember that experience being hard because as in the middle of production season, imagine planning a major production with an overseas company and having to plan that production from a hospital bed with screen time. So I'm being treated like a toddler. I have specific hours that I need to be on the phone. Doctors don't give me TV and stuff like that because when we're sick, stress doesn't really help. And so trying to plan a production on crunch time with somebody who is working on a total different time zone while being in the hospital was not the easiest thing, but it was also a sad experience because I wasn't supposed to be in the hospital. I was supposed to be on the production site. So I've had to live with stuff like that. On the bright side, I haven't been sick very often. So a lot of warriors talk about being sick every couple of weeks, every couple of months. I go years without being sick or years without a crisis. And so I'm grateful for that. I think a good reason behind that is because my parents really did a good job of getting me the best medical care, but they also made sure that leading up to my adult life, they gave me every treatment. So if it was a case where I wasn't supposed, they were, well, my mother especially is a Google fanatic. She would research, she would make herself knowledgeable about the disease, and because of that, she knew what treatments to get. I do think I have the best medical team, or one of the best medical team in the country, because my parents invested in that. And so now in my adult life, I'm not sick as often. And when I do get sick, I have a lot of doctors who really truly know what they're doing, because sickle cell is not a disease that you guess and spell. You have to know what you're doing as a medical caregiver. I must say though that I've had experiences, bad experiences in the hospital system, but it's not as bad as I've heard on my end. But yeah, I think in a nutshell, I'm grateful for life. I live my life thinking that I can seize the day, seize the moment, do everything, because it feels like I'm chasing life and running from death. Every day feels like that. So I just keep fighting. And hence, I am a warrior. And that's my warrior story.